By the way, the American people deserve to see someone say that on CNN. And so
But
you
I
performed a
also
great service.
And like, go for it. Like, just say it. Like, I just got sick of being scared. I got exhausted about biting my tongue. And I just like, again, even if I'm wrong, I'm like, why don't I throw something out there and I'll correct it later if I'm wrong. But I can't keep just being scared of this. Like, what even is it? Like,
Good for
getting
you.
canceled? That's not even a thing. I don't even know I think the only thing scarier than censorship is self-censorship.
Wow. Well
That's right.
said.
Like, I'm self-censoring and I'm complaining about censorship and it's all in here,
Yeah, right.
So I kind of was like, how dare I complain about censorship if I'm the one censoring myself?
Welcome to What's Left, a weekly political discussion challenging the mainstream left. I'm Eduardo with co-host, teacher and socialist Andy Lipson. And we're online at Whatsleftpodcast.com. You can find that link to our site in the episode notes where you found this episode. You can also find my personal social media handle as at Don Eduardo Abarca. Please subscribe, rate, review, turn on your notifications, and share your favorite episode where we found this episode. We also have shirts, and you can always contact us through our blog for that, and Andy will answer you. All right. Topic of the week, Andy.
Well, it's what we're going to do about our YouTube channel. We've been talking. We have been talking for quite some time in the last 3 or 4 weeks since we got our second strike. I got irritated, and I'm just tired of YouTube's nonsense. And let me turn my phone off, or turn that buzzer off there. And was feeling like, you know what, we've got enough other platforms. Yes, we have a lot of subscribers, at least for us, a lot of subscribers on our YouTube channel, but we should just be done with this. And initially I thought, so really what we're talking about today, even though you and I have discussed this earlier, is making a decision about what we're going to do with our YouTube channel. And I know I had talked to you about, what we're going to be telling people today is we're done with YouTube. We're not coming back. So we're going to keep our channel, like we're not canceling it. If we get one more strike in the next month, then our channel will be ended. But I was planning on making the official announcement that we were done with our YouTube channel, but I've kind of changed my mind. And so that's what I wanted to talk with you about.
Yeah, it's been an ongoing conversation. We've even had a different channel for as a backup, but even then I think I had learned that if you post something even on a second channel that you have, you'll still get taken down, something like that.
Okay. I didn't know
that. Well, why don't we get right into it? What did we decide, and what are we trying to do?
Well, we haven't made a decision yet. I mean, obviously, I think you had heard that I was basically saying we were done with YouTube altogether. And my reason is, one, I'm frustrated with having to deal with this worry about community strikes. Just to show people, this is what it looks like. Let me share my screen here. On our last episode that we got, this was RFK Jr. and the Maha myth part 2. Trump gets a pardon. This was talking in more detail. Well, a little bit more about how Maha is, kind of not going to make America healthy again. But you can see we had already gotten a general strike, a general strike that starts you down the whole count. Then we got our first strike, and then here we are at our second strike. And then that's the orange card, I guess. And when you get to here, it's a red card. And all this stuff is, I don't know, talking about vaccines and things like that. You can get strikes for other things as well. We got strikes for doing AI before. And let me show you. Let me just show you one other part to this. So if you go to the content here on our channel, you can see that this episode, RFK Jr. and the Maha Myth Part 2, was removed. It was removed on December 6th, right? And then we had an earlier one, which was How Do We Stop World War? That was removed on November 2nd. So that's why we have the 2 strikes. And then there was one. Then when we were talking with, it was this was one when we were talking with Michael Caine, and again, vaccines came up. And we were talking with Michael Caine about that. I was sending you an unlisted episode. Obviously, we must have said something about vaccines in that. And that one got our first strike. So this was one that started us on the process of the countdown. Here's our first official strike that had us removed for a week. And then we got a second strike removed for 2 weeks. So this is what we're dealing with. And so what we have at the top here says channel violations. You see how it says 2? That stays at 2 for another 30 days because each of these violations we get is like a 90-day violation. And so in 30 days, we're going to be down to 1 and have 1 strike to play with. And then in another 30 days after that, probably out in March, we'll be down to 1 strike basically, or let's see, 2, 1. No, we'll be down to like the baseline strike, and we'll have 2 strikes to play with at that point. Meaning that, so I started to think about this in light of the fact that, we have almost 1,000 subscribers. Let me stop this. And part of me was like, I think, since I just don't want to let go of it, but I don't want to subordinate myself in my own mind to their fear mongering. I think the best way to do with this is, I think we should be off YouTube for about another month, until we get 1 strike back. And then let's come back onto YouTube, do our thing. And then we might get 2 strikes back. And I would basically say, let's just, every time we get we get to that threshold of almost getting a strike. I think the game we should play is, all right, we'll remove ourselves from YouTube so that we can't get a strike. And then we'll play the game again with them. We'll play the little dance. I don't think censorship is going to get better over time on any platform. I think the things you get censored for are going to shift and change. But I just think I don't think I don't see how we get hurt by playing this dance. I do think we get hurt is if we play the dance by using code words or censoring ourselves or things like that. But if instead what we do is just know that we give ourselves a little, censorship buffer, then I think it's worth playing that game with YouTube. I think, we reach other people this way. Our last episode with Jake on it had over 1,000 views. That's not nothing, and at some point I always look forward to the opportunity where we might reach somebody who will reach back to us and be like a contact of a sort, of a person we get to learn about, and in the context of either being a socialist or being in the freedom movement, somebody who wants to talk with us about our ideas. And I do think that the electronic vehicle is one that is it's a prison, right? Because it's the capitalist tool. But for now, I think it's worth using to see who we can reach, who we can make contact with, and how we can continue to get ideas out there as best we can, and use it as a platform for saying the things that we believe. And then also, of course, you and me, Eduardo, and Kenny and Emma and Jessica, whenever she rejoins us. I obviously want to continue the What's Left format, or What's Left forum, for talking about ideas, but we don't need YouTube to do that. We have other platforms to do that. This is just a vehicle to reach a particular audience that I'm willing to play I'm willing to play their game about, using strikes. And the reason I want to have strikes to play with is I don't want you and me to be nervous about what we're going to say and what we're going to put up here in fear of getting our last strike. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to be off, because I felt like that fear was going to actually cause us to self-censor. But I think if we actually do this instead and just rejoin YouTube in about 20 or 30 days when one of the strikes goes away, then I think I'm willing to play with strikes for, as much as you are, and I'll say what I'm going to say, and we'll just see what happens. And then if we get lucky and we don't get a strike, then we get 2 strikes to play with in another 30 days. And then we just continue on our way until YouTube decides that they are done with us. And they, they could hit us with 3 strikes very easily by just giving us strikes on previous content. Like they do that at times. So we're here by the grace of our masters, because they could have removed us already by now. So if we can stay on, and it's still, I wouldn't describe it as under our control. I would just say we can still do it under the rules that they are establishing. I say we still do it. So that's my that's what I'm proposing. Let me see what you think.
I think I understand your frustration, and I've been convinced over time that our time at YouTube is days are counted, and I understand. I think you more than me. You're just. I think you. Forgive me if I characterize you this way. But I think you become impatient, and you don't want to play games.
Yeah.
And you want to be real, and you want to be authentic and direct, and you don't want to be censored. And that's the ideal way to be. I think that's not our reality, though. I think we are living into the world that is after 2020. There have been censorship before. We've been discussing even around Alex Jones. I even said this in the last time. But the reality is that there isn't a social movement that I see currently. And there are large powers that are deciding what content is acceptable in our society and what content isn't. And I understand so many people anger. Even Rumble has its issues. Even people who are pretty well known and in like journalists and politicians get censored all the time. And anyone that is censoring even a conservative or a liberal, or anyone that is censoring someone that doesn't agree with your beliefs or your stand, is automatically going to censor us all. That's the way these things go. And I've been trying. Andy gave me, I think, like weeks in advance trying to think about what to do, and I hadn't even become decisive about it, because I think about the people that we would lose, or our content that would be lost. And I also think about the people that we've reached, the people who've been inspired, moved, touched by us, and have found connection with us on these platforms. Unfortunately, these are the platforms that are largely used. And if anyone watches or reads dystopian novels, or watches dystopian series or films, I think there has always been a resistance waiting, right? Like there are resistors that form secret societies, or that pass along information in code, or they try to inform the public via cryptic messages, or try to make sure that the resistance stays alive until there is an awakening, or some sort of a mass movement of people. And I think that that's what we have to do. Sometimes I get into this idea that, if we don't stick around, then other voices are just not going to be around. And if we don't speak in code language, how do we then inspire or stick around for people that need us? And I think if we look at 2020, which, we didn't create the movement that we needed, of course, but there was a community that stuck by us, and that community needed us. And that community, I remember the very first time we did Workers and Students for Choice, there were hundreds of people on that call. And I was amazed at how many people got in touch with us, and they really found a refuge in that connection. Unfortunately, I don't think that this kind of connection is the way that to go. But we then separated ourselves and we got working in different areas um, around the USA. And some people were working down south of California. Other people were working in other areas of the Bay Area. You and I were working with one group, and so I think that if we don't linger, what will happen to those people? So maybe that's what my mind goes to, and I feel uh, suddenly get melancholic or sad that people will not have that support. Then there's the other part, which I want to let you first speak to what I'm saying first.
Well, I think we can reach those people not as well, but with our other platforms. First of all, we're established enough that, and we know enough. I know enough people, and you know enough people, I think, that
Mhm.
if we just have our episodes and just have a place to place them, whether or not we have 1,000 subscribers or not, that is a way for us to begin to send a signal out there. It's a bit of a clipped signal compared to one that it reaches a larger group. But again, to talk about, if you add up our BitChute and Rumble followers, it's about 80 or something like that. And now I guess that would include also Odyssey. Now obviously that's like 1/10 of whatever this is, but we reach people through Spotify, through our iTunes account or Apple. And then I know there are people who go directly to our blog to visit, because that one gets about 30 hits a day, which is not small, 30 to 50 hits a day. And sometimes it gets up to 100 and 150 on a day. But most of the time it's about 30 to 50 per day. So if we just talk about outreach, I think we can reach people there. And it's interesting that you said the thing about speaking in code. Here's where I would be okay with speaking in code on this vehicle. If there actually was an actual movement that was on the ground, and the way we spoke about that movement to each other in this compromised platform was in code to tell each other messages about something where we don't speak in code. Like, essentially, I was talking to Jake about this. The Bolsheviks had a legal part of their party and an illegal part of their party. The legal part of the party, because it was illegal to be a socialist at the time, didn't speak of socialism, didn't speak of revolution, and they actually were also part of elections, and they did not have their candidates talk about those things. But there was also an illegal part of the party, a part of the party that was about revolution, that did speak about those things, but didn't do it openly, and had its newspaper. Its newspaper was passed about surreptitiously. So if we were in a situation where we were part of a movement on the ground, and one of the vehicles for the illegal movement to talk of itself legally was to speak to each other in code on this electronic compromise platform, I would do that, because I don't want to hurt the movement. But that doesn't exist. And in the absence of that movement, what I think, if we're not careful about code and speaking in code, we will actually have ourselves affected by this censorship regime, and find ourselves subordinating our own ideas, clipping our own thoughts internally. And that's something we can't allow to happen. If there's going to be a possibility of change, we have to still keep our focus on the possibility of freedom, and our mind tuned to what freedom might feel like, even if we don't experience it day to day, and even if we live in a very non-free and operate in a very non-free environment here on the internet. So I find more risk than you do in speaking in code. And the reason I would speak in code and do it openly is if I knew I was part of a movement that wasn't speaking in code in our meetings in person here in the Bay Area. But that's not the situation we have. So I just want to say that I very much am prepared to carry on YouTube, but I think I see more of a risk of you and me, if we stay on this platform, starting to self-censor ourselves. And that would be in my opinion, that would be very damaging, not just to you and me, but to the possibility of a better world if we ever hope to be a part of articulating that and making that happen with others. So that's what I would say.
All right. There's the second part that Jake brought up.
And okay, so would you have any response to that though?
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying we have to agree. It sounds like you're okay with the proposal I'm saying.
I don't. I understand it. I understand your point of view. Your point of view is assuming that we are big enough for people to find us. We know enough people. We don't know enough people in the world, or at least in the country, in North America, that we could find connection with. And we're so small that other groups around us need to be connected. And I feel that we put ourselves at risk. Obviously, you are modifying a few things that we spoke about last month. Can't believe it. We're in 2025.
Right.
But we are in agreement about our stand on not compromising.
Okay.
Where we are not in agreement is when. And I think we're not at a time just yet to. It's the when.
Yeah.
I don't think we're at a time right now to let go.
And I think you hear my proposal that I'm not letting go.
Mhm.
I'm just basically playing a little game with, or I'm proposing to play this game with YouTube in relationship to their 1 strike, 2 strike, whatever thing.
Yes, whereas I would like you to speak in code, such as using carrots or talking about
Right.
Talking about needles, or instead of saying PLANDEMIC.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I'd rather you say 2020 or lockdowns. You don't like that.
No.
And you and I have gone back and forth about that. And we've come to an agreement. We've come to an understanding where you'll just speak the way you speak and I'll speak the way I speak.
Right.
I get frustrated every time we get a strike, not because of me, but because of you.
Or we got a strike because we publicized something that was a broad thing. That 1 strike about World War III was somebody else's statements, but whatever.
Right.
But
right, that's true.
clear. Yeah, you're absolutely right. When we get a strike, it's usually because of something I'm talking or I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it ain't something you're saying. Agreed.
Yeah, I can't. I'm trying to think as we are recording. When have we gotten a strike because of me?
I can't think of one.
Yeah, I can't either.
No.
So I get frustrated with you, because I don't think that we're at a point, like I said, to speak so freely and then lose ourselves into the ether.
Yeah.
I still think that we have much to do and stick around. But this is what's like working with your co-host.
Right. So are you okay then with us? We're going to maybe be off YouTube for about 2 or 3 weeks. We'll put this episode up and then we'll be out and then we'll get back on YouTube once we get another strike to play with. You agree with that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, and we just maybe agree to disagree about my approach to this versus the way you would approach this. As you said,
Yeah.
talking about carrots and not wanting to say carrots.
hmm
Um,
For
all right.
those who don't know, carrots became an emoji for a lot of the people during on Twitter, where folks were using it in order to describe VACCINES or needles, and that's what I think people recruited to. They started recruiting towards ways to get around censorship. But here I am with my good buddy Andrew Lipson. We've been
Well,
at this for years.
yeah.
There's another area to this, though. I'd like for us to discuss what Jake was bringing up, and
Yeah.
he was cautioning us to be careful, not because they could strike us, but because we could put ourselves in danger.
Yeah.
Either
Yeah.
very light or moderate or high levels, right? There are different levels. Whether light could be just as much as people threatening us on comment section, or there might be a moderate one where people actually make us lose our jobs or try to, right? Or there might be a stronger red level where people go after our families or try to target us or pin us to something that's um, illegal, or try to make us shut our voices.
Yep.
And that's what we have seen. I don't think we're at that level. But that's what we have seen with other people. I don't think I wouldn't consider myself to be there at a level where as a whistleblower, but I would say that there are people who have had things happen to them because they speak truths online. And what we saw happen just to the family, or to forgive me if I pronounce this wrong, Sushir Balaji, Suchir, Sushir, and then last name Balaji. He was a young whistleblower of just speaking truth about OpenAI, and the more that we speak against and trying to convince people, and we have an audience that does listen to us about AI, or we talk about things that are politically contrarian, like as contrarians in our society that speak up against the government. I have said a few things that I'm afraid to say. I said once, see if I can brush on it. I said once that the way I see our movement is that we take over community space wherever you're at. In my case, it was schools, and then you have other families take over schools, and then eventually you build networks, and those networks take over a city. That city does what some people do, such as with the CEO, right, where people take justice into their own hands. And that's because people are trying to create change, and sometimes these changes are radical because you're trying to protect the working class, and there are people in the elite class who do a lot more damage and harm, as we have seen. If anyone got what I just said, because I'm trying to not stutter here, but I am like things like that, where people, I'll say it one more time, people, working class folk take justice into their own hands. Or we've spoken about guns, or we've spoken, these things can come at us, resurrections, is it resurrection or resurgence? What do you call it when you say, when what happened? Huh? Insurrection. Thank you. Correct my English. Insurrections. So if you become any of these people that are speaking to a part of society that obviously feels that they have been wronged, and the government deems you a terrorist, we are in jeopardy. Our lives are in jeopardy. And so there are those levels, right? I've just described those levels.
Yeah, and those levels have existed for a long time. What Jake is saying, and the conversation I had with Jake, I think just before the end of the year, was, and it was came up in relationship to us talking about us dealing with censorship and how we were trying to figure out how to deal with it on YouTube. But he was saying, Andy, I think you guys on What's Left probably need to watch yourself a little bit more now, than you did before. And he was saying with Trump coming to power, with people who are called with communism, particularly from China or North Korea, seen as an enemy, with the idea that the government is likely to be even more brittle in relationship to opposition. And I agree with him on that. Not on the basis because it's Trump, but I agree with him on the basis that the U.S. ruling class is going to get more desperate and more violent abroad. And if it's going to get more desperate and violent abroad, it definitely has to become more desperate and violent internally. In fact, I actually think it does it more so internally before it does it externally. So, and he and I kind of, because I said to him, well, if Kamala would have gotten elected, do you think it was going to be all that different? And I think at first he might have said it might be different for me as a leftist. And I don't agree with him on that. I think that this was going to be a bad environment regardless. Nevertheless, I do agree with him that things are getting worse for the U.S. ruling class, and therefore things are going to get worse for the U.S. working class, particularly because the U.S. working class, well, if it was fighting back, then there would be another way it would be worse. But in the absence of a fight back, in some ways, I think they can afford to just let things go. But I also think that they don't pay any cost for snuffing people out. And so the young man you mentioned, who worked for OpenAI, he was a whistleblower, and I learned more about his story now. And
Yeah.
Apparently he was into AI, and he was a brilliant programmer. He had helped OpenAI do stuff in terms of develop its own programs, but then he started to become disgusted by what he saw them using AI for, largely in ChatGPT. And apparently he was going to be deposed for a suit against OpenAI that's really about copyright stuff. But mind you, his disgust with it and fear of where AI was headed, like, this kid was a true believer. He's 26. He was a true believer, and then he became like, I'm out, I'm done, and became a whistleblower, and then was murdered. Or was killed, and apparently it was a suicide. Well, both you and me were suspicious of that in the first place. And this is here in San Francisco. But his parents came out just a few days ago and basically said, we do not believe that our son was killed. I mean, our son killed himself. He had no indication of doing that. We have evidence, even from the scene. They hired their own private detective that suggested there was a struggle in his apartment. And of course, the San Francisco PD were basically just saying, no, he killed himself. So I don't think that's what happened. I think his parents are being very courageous. But here's the overall reason to tell this story. Is Jake is saying something that I think is true, which is the world is getting more dangerous for people who are fighting to build a better world. And the world is getting more dangerous regardless. And he is saying, Andy, you may want to watch when you use terms like insurrection or revolution or armed struggle. And I think there may come a time when I will feel like that has to be watched. I don't feel like I'm there yet. I think it's important for us to speak plainly to any audience we have and to not project fear. Because I think when we take a lot of time to say something and don't get directly to it, what we're projecting is fear. We're projecting our fear onto other people out there into the world. And I don't want to do that. I want people to not have fear and to begin to feel like they can speak their minds any way they want. and to be outraged if they can't speak their mind any way they want, and to fight back when they can't do that. That's what's going to have to happen. So there's a reason I don't just do these things because I'm trying to be a tough guy. I do this because politically, I believe you have to lead by example sometimes. And I want other people to speak freely about what they're saying. And when they are told to be quiet, I then want to see what they're going to do. And I hope that they're willing to resist that. So that's my reason currently for saying those things. The way I put it to Jake was, I do believe there's going to, frankly, I think that we've already had some false flags. Marjorie from Workers and Students for Choice had suggested there would be many false flags in the new year. I personally think this stuff in LA and Las Vegas are false flags of a sort. I think they are events that are created by the state to make more problems and to create pretexts for the U.S. to do what they're going to do. But so I already think we're seeing examples of false flags from the jump. I think there's going to be a much bigger one that's going to involve something with regards to the U.S. war in Ukraine and possibly in China. When that happens, and maybe I will feel real fear about speaking more plainly about that. I'll have to decide what I'm going to do. I certainly know I talked to Brandy about this, and she didn't think Jake was wrong. So I just feel like if you're going to organize and if you're going to project for people, if we're going to encourage people to organize, then we have to do that projecting like a level of fearlessness, I don't mean no fear at all, but some level of opposition, some level of just do what the fuck you want. And if you don't, then you can't organize people. You can't genuinely tell people, organize something in your neighborhood, and at the same time take a posture of, okay, but watch out, watch out, watch out. I don't think it works. So for that reason, I love Jake. I respect Jake. I don't think he's being I don't think he's being over, he's not being crazy when he tells me these things, but I'm choosing not to do them right now because it doesn't feel like it's the right thing to do in relationship to the level of threat we're facing. And I think I am hoping that when we do send our messages out, because sometimes we have episodes about organizing, that we are encouraging people to organize. We are encouraging people to stand up. We are encouraging people to speak their minds, not discouraging them by projecting our fear onto them.
Yeah.
So I wanted to share that with you because I knew you might, some of the things Jake's saying are in some ways aligned with some of the things you're saying. And obviously we both respect Jake.
Yeah, I do. I respect Jake, or John Kleisik,
Yep.
Author of New World Order. We have some things in common. I think I'm on principle. I think that I align with you. And my understanding of the way that we should do things on practical levels to survive lives in being cautious. And I'm trying to balance those things in my life so that I can try to share what my thoughts are and what we should be doing on this platform that is also private and could take us down anytime.
Right. You go.
So these are conflicting thoughts. And I appreciate you bringing that up about Jake. I wish you would have been here to have that discussion with us. I was there for a bit when we finished our last episode with him, and you two were commencing a conversation that I think is very important and should have been online because it is a conflicting decision.
Yep. Yeah. So I do think there might be another time when we do get to talk with him about it, like on one of our episodes. But for now, I just will say I appreciate what he's saying. Mostly, I'm going to be trying to push myself to say things that I might feel a little frightened to say. And that's what when we started What's Left, that's what I wanted to do, is being a socialist and being in a socialist organization had taught me to have a lot of fear about speaking the truth. I felt like I needed to undo that, and I felt like What's Left was a great place for undoing a lot of that fear and taking off my shackles, so that not that I could speak truth, but just so I could speak sincerely about what I believe, even if it's not true. And so I'm reluctant to walk that back on this forum, because that was a big part of me starting What's Left with You, was the opportunity to undo the damage, in my opinion, the damage that had been done to me by being in a political organization in which we very much self-censored ourselves. And I think it has doing that kind of thing does a lot of damage to people when they self-censor.
Yeah. This is, I think, not the last conversation we'll have on this.
Yeah.
And I invite folks to weigh in and to share with us what they think we should be doing. And we might just do that or not. But either way, you give us room for thought and space to think about these things.
Right. And so this episode will be up this week on YouTube. Our next episode that'll be on YouTube won't be until we're down from 2 strikes down to 1 strike. And I think that's going to be in like first week of February.
Yeah. I have to go through our edits and see what I said now.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will.
People don't know how much I've removed.
And on sometimes you say, Andy, I'm not sure you should say that. I think sometimes I've listened to you, other times I didn't, but no.
Very few times, but you have removed a few things.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that does it for this week's episode.
Next week, for those of you who won't be seeing us on YouTube, if you want to see it, we're going to be reviewing the HBO documentary Surveilled. But you can find it on Rumble.
Yes. And my condolences to that family, although I don't think they can get much anything out of the FBI for asking them to go into it.
No, I sent a donation to their investigation thing, that their own investigation that they're trying to do. And I sent a message to the family saying, if you'd be open to talking to us, we would be doing it. But I did.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, can't hurt. But
of course. Yeah. And let's not forget, of course, John Barrett, Joshua Dean, both whistleblowers, also employees of Boeing.
Okay.
And they also exposed dangers in aircraft manufacture. And so just another shockingly, suddenly, after they spoke up, they were gone.
Right. And I do believe Jake's right. The environment is going to get more dangerous for people who want to fight back, and have a posture of opposing the system. So, but I don't know. What do you do about that?
It's an ongoing discussion we'll have.
Yep.
All right. Well, that does it for this week's episode. What's Left is a weekly political podcast / channel challenge in the mainstream left. We post information about our topics and our guests on the episode notes, where we found this episode, or on our blog on whatsleftpodcast.com. You can find past episodes to this podcast / channel there and connect with us. I remind folks, if you like anything you've heard here, please subscribe, rate, review, turn on your notifications to any of our platforms on Spotify, iTunes Podcasts, BitChute, Odyssey, YouTube, Rumble, or Telegram. You can find our blog and any of those links in the episode notes. Maybe not on YouTube, but on other areas of these platforms where we found this episode. If you would like to give us feedback about something you've heard or suggest something for us to cover, contact us through our blog. Thank you, and I'm Eduardo Barca with co-host Andy Luzon. Thank you very much, Andy, for everything you do on What's Left.
You too, Eduardo. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Ciao.